Okay, so we've moving now onto, we've begun to move already onto this topic of the students. What's the student experience? So we've got a bit of a sense of what their profile is. I mean, who are they and what's their experience? And as a reference point, how is that different from the traditional in the classroom, living in the town experience? So we'll go back this way. We'll start again.
Okay. I would say for many of the students I have, most of which were master's students, they were extremely rural, so the distance to come to campus was not really possible. Also, they tended to be adults who were early to mid-career, working full-time with families and other responsibilities. And so the flexibility of the online courses made it possible for them to complete their degree that they wouldn't ordinarily be able to do that. So in that sense, the students were similar academically, but their life circumstances were different than those students who were going to come to campus.
Yeah.
I would perhaps talk about a couple of dimensions. I already mentioned the same student profile. As Denise said, early to mid-career people with a lot of life and professional experience that they bring to class, and we encourage that actively. I mean, you can certainly do that in a classroom environment, but it's a very different situation when you talk to a person who's at the undergraduate level or just gotten their undergraduate degree and moving into the master's, who really has perhaps a few part-time jobs but doesn't have this rich and deep and long-standing professional experience that the online students have. Online students challenge us as instructors, so there's always the question, well, how can we apply this? How is this useful? What is this good for? Is this just learning for the sake of learning, or is there a deeper reason? So I think from an instructional point of view, online students are more demanding and challenge us as instructors, as professors more. The sense of community is amazing. I mean, the social network that's been formed, students refer jobs to each other, they know what goes on in their families and their personal lives, so they recreate a sense of network and classroom camaraderie online very, very, very easily.
Yeah, I've had probably at the far extreme a student go into labor during one of my classes and give birth in the morning and give the birth announcement to all of us shortly thereafter. So the sense of actually being involved in somebody's life when it comes to something like that, I think, is quite remarkable. And she had the foresight to do her paper ahead of time. I mean, this is, I think, the level of commitment and the willingness to have that kind of very fluid interaction, then needing to fall out, and then interaction again. A different sort of rhythm, I think, sometimes than our on-campus students have, although our on-campus students are like that as well. But I think there's a kind of intentionality of connection on the part of students, but also an intentionality of both scaffolding the class in ways that will be accessible to people who have to tune in and out in different ways, and a different, and I think higher level of freedom in the class, because the students are always involved in that kind of recursive relationship between the information and materials you're giving them and the practice that they're engaged in. So in diversity and equity in education, for instance, I'm very often working with either transformative school leaders or people just starting out in schools and seeing patterns of problems that they would like to mitigate, who want to jump in right away and who see, I think, class materials and discussion with other people in the profession as just vital to not only improving their professional lives, but improving the lives of kids. And I think their dedication and their willingness to work through either wonderful moments in their lives where there's a birth or difficult moments in their lives where there's a professional transition, and to work together in community, I think is quite remarkable.
I had a student who was often nursing her infant during class. If her mic was on, we could all tell. But she felt quite comfortable. Maybe it was the same student next semester. But she felt quite comfortable with that. We all did. It would have been probably different in a classroom. I think we have a lot of strategies in a regular class for how to keep students engaged and connected with each other. A student who's not speaking up very much, we want to encourage to participate. I think that there are similar strategies that we can use online, but they're often different than the ones that work in a classroom. I think both Peter and Chris have already made this point. Generationally now, we're dealing with a different group of students now than we were 15 or 20 years ago. They're on Facebook. They're comfortable with the idea of a network of friends or associates or collaborators that they never meet or don't meet face to face. And so they're often contributing ways of making connections with each other that are even outside our control or even knowledge in terms of our running the class. One thing I'll add that hasn't been mentioned yet is something that I've done with most of my online classes is I have group projects, and I require the students to work with a group, and they get graded as a group, which they often grumble about. That's another story. But by having a group project, they form a very close connection over the course of the term with a very small group of people that they're really invested in. They don't know each other going into the project. They become quite close by the time they have to turn something in together. And the fact that they have a common grade gives them an investment in working together successfully. So I think there's a lot of things you can do that reinforce that sense of, I'm not just taking this class myself, which I think is one of the big dangers of online courses.